This is a medical procurement case that's quoted from the one workshop conducted by OECD held in Romania in 2010. So this paper is entitled Expert Seminar, Effective Means of Investigation and Prosecution of Corruption. So out of this conference, this paper was developed. So the case, the medical procurement case that I'm going to discuss is actually taken from this case. So this is actually a medical procurement case that happened in state X in Romania. So this case is about a procurement of this medical procurement, and it's actually the tender evaluation is done in state X. The chairman of the tender evaluation committee is also a doctor and as well as a politician. So him and his evaluation committee selected Medica, who won the tender to supply the 16 million contract of medical equipment supplies. Now, Dr. Andre is a very famous doctor within the city, and he is also a close friend of Dr. Martin. And Dr. Martin is a shareholder of the Medica company who won the tender. Medica is actually a company that is based in Switzerland and is owned by Martin and is directed. The managing director of this Medica company is Miss Dora. So what actually transpired was that after 3 years of this operation, of this tender operation, there was an internal audit. Now the internal audit was done following the successful of the tender bid 3 years ago in that particular city. So the audit found that most of the equipments that have been detailed in the evaluation, it was not in fact the actual things that were bought. So the equipments that were bought were deferred. They were different from the ones that have been approved in the tender. Secondly, they found out that Medica was not only the company that won, but it's the most expensive company that bid. So the other ones who have been ranked low were not selected. So as a result of these findings, the State X Tender Board, directed by Dr. Andre, they also directed another special external investigation hired from British. So these external audits conducted the audit into this procurement, and they found that the findings that's done by the internal audit were, in fact, they were both the same. So what happened to this tender was that in the books of Medica, they actually made some traveling payments for Dr. Andre, who traveled to 7 overseas travel to Monaco, Switzerland, USA, and Spain. And out of these business trips that were bought by this Medica company, the bid winner, they paid for Dr. Andre's travel in these 7 traveling trips overseas to various countries. And they were all business trips. And further to that, they also paid Wally. Now, Mr. Wally's bank account is the husband of Mrs. Wally. Now, who is Mrs. Wally? Mrs. Wally was, in fact, the officer in the Ministry of Finance within the State X that actually sanctioned the contract bid, because the bid was that if the $16 million was approved through the tender, then this money will be loaned from elsewhere to the Ministry of Finance. So Ms. Wally was actually the officer who will be scrutinizing the tender documents for the purpose of borrowing the funds, and then the funds will be repaid by the Ministry of Finance. So Miss Wally, in fact, was the core officer who endorsed it, and then it will be the papers will be moved to the financial institutions for loan. So as a result of her work, Mr. Wally actually, her husband, actually collected 100,000 euro in his account, paid by Medica into his account. So that's one fact. This is another fact. The other one was on the same day and date, Mr. Andre opened two accounts, one in Switzerland under his personal account, Dr. Andre, and the other one, a smart limited company that's based in British Virgin Islands. So he himself is the shareholder as well as the director in both. So actually, in Switzerland's account, it received some of the funds from Smart Limited. Now, Smart Limited got the funds from where? Actually got the funds from Medica. So around 2 million around 2 million euro was received through Smart Limited as well as his personal account in Switzerland. So out of these two accounts, as a director as well as the beneficiary of both accounts, Mr. Andre played a role in pushing funds into his personal account in State X. And there he used the money to travel to Singapore, USA, and Caribbean. This is different from this one's paid by Medica. This one is paid through these transit accounts. So he paid for Singapore, USA travel as well as other properties. So this case came about because it was investigated by the prosecutors in Romania, and so at the time of reporting, Mrs. Wally actually was jailed for this corruption act. However, the defendant, Mr. Dr. Andre, was acquitted, but at the time of the writing, he was the prosecution actually did further lodgement and have the case appealed. So what actually transpired was that he was acquitted because of the evidences in relation to defense a bit stronger for them to argue that they were weak on the side of the prosecution. So this was actually a case that was involved in the procurement when someone actually benefited. So if he was found guilty, then this case would be involved to core personals who have been involved in the Ministry of Finance as well as the tender committee, who actually will be found guilty because of this procurement issues that are giving way for the scandalous conduct in terms of money laundering as well as financial fraud and corruption. So this is the update of another case that's actually happened in other jurisdictions, which resulted in someone who received tips or kickbacks have been jailed for that. In this case, is Miss Wally.